Hello and welcome to JSB Talks Digital, the podcast for marketers, small business owners, and those of you bringing your skills into the digital age. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke and I am the CEO and founder of the Digital Training Institute. Coming up in today's show, why Facebook Live has pushed Blab off the live broadcast stage. I speak to Alan Swan, a podcaster and producer with RTE, about the art of interviewing. Candace Payne, her Chewbacca mask, and Kohl's marketing hack of genius. My featured column, Don't Do Social for Social's Sake, and the social media tool that made my working week.
Social media news.
I love Twitter, and Twitter has announced some new changes, so they're giving us more to do with their 140 characters. Praise the Twitter gods. For example, if you want to tweet me at Tweets by JSB in replies and add media attachments, they will no longer count in your 140 characters. I sometimes have wondered, what if I could actually retweet my own tweet? Don't hate me, guys, but guess what? Twitter have been thinking the exact same thing. So Twitter will enable the retweet button on your own tweets so you can easily retweet or quote tweet yourself when you want to share a new thought on that original amazing tweet. Blab, a lot of news around Blab, the live broadcasting social network where you have 4 people on a Blab at any one time. We've been complaining about the stability and the drop-off of the platform. And when the founder came out recently and started talking about new changes, us in the broadcasting world got a little bit excited. We thought, okay, they're going to improve the functionality, add new features, and we're going to be empowered to do more live broadcasting to help our businesses. Not so, I'm afraid. They've also announced a new app called Bebo, Swipe to Chill, and that was developed by the Blab team. And it seems that they're going to shift the focus of the company to a different audience and a different model. It appears to be designed to facilitate video chat with your existing friends, much like Snapchat. So I fear that Blab might not be the #1 live broadcasting channel, and instead Facebook Live is going to take their place. As you know, I was at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego, and at that event, I heard the trends from Michael Stelzner, the founder of Social Media Examiner, on what marketers are doing in the industry. I've got a hold of their 2016 marketing industry report, and some of the findings make for interesting reading. No surprise, perhaps, video has become essential. Live video is hot, so if you're not doing it, you must add it into your social media strategy. Facebook and YouTube hold the top spots for future plans. Did you know by 2019, 80% of the content on the internet will be video? If you're not doing video, you have to start. Snapchat is no doubt the rising star of social media, and Facebook is still the most important social network for marketers by a long shot. So, hot in social media news right now. Love your thoughts at Tweets by JSB.
Interview.
I'm delighted to have Alan Swan join me for today's show. Alan is an award-winning producer with RTE, Ireland's public service multimedia organisation. He is also the author of Music Chronicle, From the Cradle to the Stage, and is the host of the Outer View podcast, where he gives tips on the art of interviewing. So no pressure on me. Alan, you're very welcome to JSB Talks Digital. Thanks for joining me.
Joanne, thanks for having me as a guest on your podcast.
So, as a producer with Ireland's national broadcaster, you've listened to and edited many an interview. Did you actually think there was a gap in the market to teach the art of interviewing? Is that what motivated your podcast series?
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by interviewing and the art of interviewing. Ever since I was a child, kind of growing up, I used to love nothing more. I must have been a strange child, but I loved nothing more than watching 2 people having a chat. And I suppose growing up in Ireland in the 80s, the Late Late Show would have been such a huge phenomenon with Gay Byrne. And every Friday night it was almost like a sneaky treat to look through the gap of the door where I was told to go to bed, but I'd be looking through the gap of the door to watch the Late Late Show and to watch the master that is Gay Byrne doing interviews. And as I grew up and I got an interest in media and radio and TV and a love of it, I just became fascinated with, newspaper interviews, radio interviews, TV interviews, anything that would have two people having that conversation. And as I was lucky enough to keep working in this business, I thought, do you know what, wouldn't it be great to have a show where you would interview people about the art of interviewing? And I found that there was no there had been maybe 2 to 3 books about the craft of interviewing, but nobody had done a show. And luckily, with kind of the explosion of podcasting at the moment, I thought, you know what, let's just do it. Let's do a show.
Now, in the world of social media, everybody is becoming an interviewer, whether it's Blab, whether it's Periscope. Now, I trained and worked as a broadcast journalist back in my home county of Donegal on Highland Radio, and I got a superb piece of advice that sticks with me today. So my boss said to me in the early days of my journalism career, Joanne, don't write down every question, because if you're reading a script, you're actually not listening and hearing what your interviewee is saying. Would you concur with that? What tips would you give a budding interviewer?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think, from the very beginning, if you're about to do an interview with somebody, your preparation is key. And I do agree with that person that gave you the advice. I think you have to, your preparation is so important. It shows a great respect for the person that you're interviewing, that you've gone to the trouble of finding out as much as you can about that subject or that person or that topic they're about to talk about. And yes, you can prepare some questions in advance, and it's always good to have it's always good to have a couple of questions in reserve, just in case the interview goes one way where you thought it was going the other way. But I do agree that, the interview should be ultimately a conversation. It should be you trying to get a bit of information out of that person, or to have that, whatever that topic is about. But if you hit a brick wall, if the interviewee is difficult, if for whatever reason that you've hit a stumbling block, that you've got a couple of questions that you can refer to. So preparation is it's just so key. You can't just go into an interview situation where you're just going to talk to somebody and then just hope the conversation flows, So, that advice was absolutely perfect advice to get early in your career. I think it's interesting what you brought up about people. Everyone's doing interviews now. Even on Snapchat, you will see people do interviews, be it PR interviews or marketing interviews or interviews with people. And ultimately, the people that are on Snapchat are doing the exact same thing as what a great interview is on radio or TV. It's a conversation where it doesn't sound like an interview. It sounds like that you're eavesdropping on a very personal conversation between two people.
What do you do with those yes-no answers that people give you in an interview? Is it you, the interviewer, is doing something wrong by asking closed questions?
Sometimes you can have a very difficult guest, and sometimes ultimately that's the type of person they are. And, I think if you get to the point where it's just yes, no, you have to go back to the questions that you're asking. And are your questions open-ended? The best questions are always open-ended. How, what, where, when, why? If you asked a person, did you feel upset about that last week? They'll just go, yes. No. Whereas if you're asking them, how did you feel about being upset? They'll elicit a bit more of an open answer. So it's of the two people. So, your questions, ultimately your first initial questions are very important. But if the person just is uncomfortable in the situation and don't want to be interviewed, sometimes it's best just to wrap up the interview really quickly and just move on if you can.
So give me 3 top tips for a budding interviewer that's starting out on podcasts. I would imagine a podcast type interview where you actually can't see the person and it's all about listening to the conversation. What 3 tips would you give them?
3 tips. Well, the first one, absolutely, I can't stress enough, is preparation. Is, having your prep done, your research done, showing that guest as much respect as you can. Second, you just brought up that word there, listening. Sometimes, and it's very difficult to do it sometimes, where you're in an interview situation where you're just trying to have a chat with somebody and you are asking them a question, they're giving you an answer, but you're thinking about, oh God, what's my next question going to be? Instead of sometimes listening, and listening can bring a conversation and an interview to another place altogether. And on the podcast on theouterview.com, there's interviews there with people like Jeff Lloyd, who's a well-known broadcaster in England, who talks about interviews that he's done with Adele, and he brings up a very funny story about listening and how to listen intently when you're doing interviews. To Claire Byrne, who's a recent guest on the show, listening is just so important. And thirdly, is to enjoy it, is to try and go into it. I think sometimes we can get very technical about interviews. You have to go in and enjoy this. I think sometimes if you're doing a podcast, it's meant to be there as something that you're passionate about. You're doing this podcast, and I was delighted because I follow you online, and your social media advice is just fantastic. And I was just so delighted to see you going to do podcasting now. And I hope that you enjoy, that you treat podcasting and broadcasting as the same as that you would treat your social media, that it's a very, conversational, personable thing, and to relax and not go, God, I hope I'm doing this interview in the right way. I think if you take on board your preparation, that you listen and that you enjoy it, natural, good flowing conversations will come out of that.
Alan, thanks a million. Great tips, not just for my listeners, but also for me. So last thing, how did I do? Pass or fail?
Oh, the absolute pass. You're flying it. I know this is a brand new series for you, and listen, the best of luck with it. And I look forward to hearing the next 10, 50, 100 episodes of your podcast.
Brilliant. Alan Swan, producer and host of the Outer View podcast and senior producer with RTE. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much, Joanne. That was great. Thank you.
Shoutouts.
So in this part of the show, I give shout outs to those who are proving remarkable online and worth talking about. Facebook Live has taken the social media world by storm, and 37-year-old Candace Payne has proven that Facebook plus live streaming is a social media match made in heaven. The Texas mum of two has had over 145 million views of her Facebook Live video in the first 7 days, my friends. Totally remarkable. Now, I'm not a Star Wars fan, and I had no idea what a Chewbacca was. In fact, I had to ask my 6-year-old, and he helped me pronounce it. I equally had no idea who Candace Payne was. However, if you go to Google, you will now find 559,000 search results. What started out as a Facebook live stream from a Kohl's parking lot in Texas has become one of the fastest growing viral videos in history. Candace, you legend. She bought a Chewbacca mask. She's a huge Star Wars fan. She said, listen, this is for me. It's a late birthday present for myself. It's certainly not for the kids. She thought she was broadcasting simply to her family and friends. Little did she know, in the coming days, she would appear on Ellen, The Today Show, have a carpool with James Corden and J.J. Abrams. And among her immediate appearance since that Facebook Live video went viral, she also got to go to Facebook HQ in Silicon Valley. Everybody is loving Candace. She is totally amazing. So big shout out to Candace Payne. If you haven't watched the video, just Google it. My next shout out goes to Cops on Blab. I've been following Officer Mike Byers and Sergeant Mark Marty for the last 18 months. As some of you might know, I published a book on how police officers and law enforcement agencies are using social media about 18 months ago. So when I discovered Cops on Blab, I actually realised that what these guys are doing, they're disrupting the world of policing communications as we know it. Mike and Marty have been broadcasting on Blab for over a year, and they consistently show up on the live streaming app every Tuesday evening. They even have a show, Cops on a Thursday, where you can get to know your local officer. And they podcast their Blab and publish it every Monday. I met the guys at Social Media Marketing World in San Diego, and it was really clear that I wasn't the only marketer that have heard of their work. If you want to disrupt communications in your industry, take a look at Cops on Blab, Officer Mike Byers and Sergeant Mark Marty. I'm going to have them on my podcast very soon, so certainly listen out for them.
JSB's column.
Don't be social for social sake. I'm a social media trainer and consultant, and I know the biggest social media problems. The top one, in my opinion, is organizations or people or business owners being social for social sake. So what do I mean about that? Well, simply it means that business owners or organizations are engaged in social networking because they think it's the right thing to do, because it's low cost, they have the potential to go viral, and you actually don't need a lot of skills to get on social media. And once online, well, that's where their wisdom stops. So I'm asking you, please don't be social just for social's sake. Tell your story. Put your people front of screen, front of mic, and talk to us like we're sitting in your living room, having a cup of tea in your kitchen, or hanging out at your office. Tell a story. Be more human. Figure out why you're using social media. Not for social's sake. What are your business goals? Do you need to raise the profile of your business, of your new product, of your service? Are people talking about you? Is social media going to spark that interest, ignite that flame in you, in your company? You have to establish what your business goals are. For some people, it's simply just sales, and that's okay. But I always say, tell stories, don't sell. If you tell great stories, if you have a conversation with the people that you want to speak to, the sale will ultimately come. Then you've got to figure out, okay, I know who I'm talking to. I know what story I want to tell. How do I repurpose that story for social media? If you're using Twitter, you've got 140 characters. How can you do that? Have you got your own hashtag? If you're using Snapchat, the current rising star of social media, how can you tell your story in 10 seconds and after 10 seconds your snaps disappear? Albeit your story remains online for 24 hours. If you're on Facebook, you have multiple opportunities. Facebook Live, photos, album, carousels, collages, and instant articles. The beautiful long form posts. Start telling your story, figure out how you're going to do it, and be more human. Decide on which platforms work best for you. My top tip on how to decide is draw up the profile and the persona of your target audience, your target customer. Do a little bit of research and find out where they're playing online. Have a content plan. Schedule your content. Engage in real-time marketing, because remember, social media is all about the now. And just like Candace Payne and Kohl's, engage in marketing hacking. Empower your team with knowledge and skills. I love when social media is kept in-house. Sometimes I'm doing myself out of a consultancy job, but train your team, empower them with skills, and they will be the best social media managers for you. Finally, you can't manage what you don't measure. Make sure that you understand the data and the insights and what actions you can take from that information. If you can't analyse the data on your own, get a little bit of help. But remember, you can't manage what you don't measure. Have fun with social media. Experiment with new social network developments. For example, Facebook Live, Instagram 60-second videos, and Snapchat filters. But most of all, folks, don't do social for the sake of social. Be social, experiment with social, be human, and tell the story.
Social media tool of the week.
The tool that saved my working week this week is GoAnimate. GoAnimate is a tool to allow you create animated videos. So the video is made up of template scenes, which you can customize by choosing characters, backgrounds, music, and props from the GoAnimate library. You can also upload your company logo and change the colours to match your brand. So one of the fun things that I do with GoAnimate is that I've actually created the JSB character, blonde hair, glasses, tall, even though I'm not tall, and my famous red heels. So you're actually personalising your videos. It's really cool. How much does it cost? Well, there are free and paid for versions. You can start with availing of the free 14-day trial, during which you can avail of the Go Premium plan, which will help you trial and figure out how to use the software. Let me tell you how I used it this week and why it saved my working week. I had a 30-minute presentation to do on key digital PR tactics. One of those tactics would probably take me about 5 minutes to explain. However, I was able to explain it in 1 minute and 30 seconds by creating a GoAnimate video. It was hugely engaging. It got brilliant feedback. Lots of people came up to me at the end and said, "What is that tool?" And It was actually the most memorable tactic of the 8 during my whole 30-minute presentation. I will put that GoAnimate video on my blog, www.digitaltraining.ie. So have a look, try GoAnimate. You never know, it might save your working week. If you want to learn more about what I've discussed in this episode, just head over to digitaltraining.ie and click on podcasts. I'll have links to all of today's stories right there. Until next time, stay focused on your social media and digital marketing, be consistent, and remember, stories, not sales. I'm Joanne Sweeney Burke. Thanks for listening.
JSB Talks Digital.